we will quickly give an introduction of Honorable Amina Salihu Ingawa, who will be the first speaker here among the resource persons sitting before you. She is a graduate of Federal Government Girls College, Buari, Abuja, in June 1999. She had a bachelor's degree in law from University of Abuja in August 2005. She obtained her master's degree in law in October 2018. Briefly, as per his experience, working experience, she has been working or had worked for about 12 years with the Federal Capital Territory Judiciary, focusing on the hearing and determination of matters filed before the FCT customary court. She presided over proceedings in that customary court, and she wrote and delivered rulings and judgments accordingly. Of course, that is the role of a judge at all levels. She serves as assistant manager with the Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, from November 2007 to April 2008. She is happily married and an active practitioner of law in Nigeria. You are welcome, ma'am. As we are aware, we have been having discussions this morning as it relates to executive women in executive leadership from the perspective of Islamic jurisprudence. We have heard much from the resource persons in the morning. This time around, this afternoon session is intended to look at the judicial role of women, or the leadership role of women in the judiciary sector. So we will be discussing, from these resource persons will be discussing the women role or leadership in the judicial setting from the Islamic perspective. And as we are all aware, this is a matter that for a very long time ago has been perceived differently by different people. The essence of this gathering is come and brainstorm and get the correct position of the position of a woman as far as the leadership in judiciary and executive are concerned. So we shall be listening to these resource persons with keen interest, with a view to having additional knowledge that we might have come here with, and hoping that that will assist us a lot in taking or perceiving the woman role in the executive and the judiciary, and particularly this time around in the judiciary sector. May I therefore respectfully invite Honorable Amina Salihu Ingawa.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. My Lord, the Chief Judge of Niger State, Justice Halima Ibrahim Abdul Malik, my Lord, Justice Inyako of the Federal High Court, my Lord, Kadi Aminu Saad, Sharia Court of Appeal, FCT, my Lord, Kadi Abdullah Adam, Sharia Court of Appeal, FCT, My Lord Justice Yunus Kutigi, Customary Court of Appeal, Abuja. Other judges here present. Learned colleagues, learned friends. Barrister, the moderator of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, this topic has actually been explored in the morning, not directly, but the concepts are actually the same. Most of the arguments that scholars use against women being appointed as judges are usually the same. So, already been discussed by scholars here. I'm not a scholar, I'm just a student, but interested in the topic. This question has been on my mind and some of my colleagues' minds time. Are women allowed to be judges? And I don't think we're even talking about the judges of the common law. We're talking about just judges under the Sharia, because we can see there are a lot of number of women already in our justice system. The challenge remains with the Sharia court system. Just sometime last year, I bumped into a question and answer session on Sunnah TV. The questioner was asking the scholar, why is it not allowed for women to be appointed as judges under the Sharia? And the scholar answered, he said, women are not allowed to be appointed as judges because women are emotional in nature, women are sensitive, they are irrational and incapable of rendering decisions in an objective manner. He also made reference to the cycle which affects women, gives them mood swings and all that. And he closed the question. He closed his answer. He didn't give any other view. That was his answer. A few years ago, I was actually in the same shoes with that particular questioner, and so were some of my colleagues. We constantly asked the question, even as we were not even judges under the Sharia, we were just judges under customary courts and magistrates. But we kept on asking ourselves, is it even allowed? You know, our confidence was somehow not very strong. And some of us didn't want to even aspire to the higher bench. Some of us, you know, we're just comfortable being customary court judges. And for me personally, I was comforted by the fact that in the customary court, we sit as a panel of 3 judges. So I would tell myself, at least I'm not the only one rendering the decisions. You know, we're a panel of 3 at that time. But when we kept on asking the questions, alhamdulillah, we did not stop. We kept on asking the questions. And the question led to so many conversations and a research which unraveled the whole situation. And we now know that under Islamic law, there is no categorical prohibition of the said rule for women. Under the Quran and Sunnah, no scholar can point to a particular verse of the Quran that says a woman cannot be appointed as a judge. No scholar can point to a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says a woman cannot be appointed to the position of a judge. However, the majority school among the 4 Sunni schools are of the opinion that women cannot be appointed as judges. And their opinion is not actually based on clear verses of the Quran. It's based on analogy, qiyas, that they did with some verses of the Quran, most of which have been discussed earlier in the morning. And then importantly, one of them, in fact, the earliest among them, Imam Abu Hanifa, he held the view that women can be appointed as judges in cases where they can give testimony. And for his own reasoning, he based it on the fact that the particular surah in Baqarah that talks about women testifying in commercial transactions. And he said, if a woman can give testimony, then she can also be a judge in those situations, in civil cases. That means, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, a woman cannot be a judge in criminal matters, but she can be a judge in civil cases. Now, apart from Abu Hanifa, other classical scholars as well have given their own opinion, which even says women can be judges in all situations, no restriction. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari says women can be judges in all cases. And he made his own analogy with the fact that a woman is qualified to be a mufti. And a mufti, somebody who gives verdicts after conducting ijtihad. Women, all the scholars, all the four Sunni schools of Islamic jurisprudence are at consensus that women can be muftis. And so according to Imam Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, he says if a woman can be a mufti, then she can be a judge, because the requirements of being a mufti are even more stringent than those requirements for a judge. And for Ibn Hazm, for him, also a classical scholar, he says that he thinks the whole Quran is applicable to the man and the woman. And there are verses in the Quran that talks about judging, but does not in any way specify that judging is the job of men. The verse says, when you judge among people, judge with justice. And he says that verse is applicable to both men and women. Nothing in the verse says that the job of a judge is specifically for women. Ibn Hazm also says that women already have authority in some areas. Some schools have, allowed women some authority, like the Malikis have allowed women to be guardians. And so he says that once a woman already exercises authority, and therefore they can be given the position of a judge. And he stresses that the textual sources, the Quran and Sunnah, do not place any prohibition for the role of judging for women. For Ibn Hazm, the only thing that women are disqualified from is the position of a supreme ruler of a state. And that's how he interpreted the hadith on females. A nation ruled by a woman will not prosper. And he says that hadith is actually related only to the supreme ruler of a state. And apart from that, a woman is qualified to hold any other position in society. Now, this brings me back to how the scholar on Sunnah TV answered the question. When he answered the question, the best way he could, I thought he could have at least said there are other views, but he didn't say so, which explains why there is the assumption, the general assumption that, women cannot be appointed as judges, because that's the conditioning. That's how the subject matter has been discussed over and over again. And it reminded me of how when you go to the hospital and you sit down with a doctor, telling him about your ailments, some, not all, will just they'll just write out a prescription for you, and they'll give you until you go to the pharmacy. No explanation. Why they do that, I do not know, because I feel as a patient, I should be told what I'm suffering from, why you're giving me the medication, what the medication will do to my system, and why I'm taking it. So what the scholar did was he just answered the question, and he didn't feel the need to clarify further, probably because he thought, this is just my assumption, maybe she might not have the capacity to understand. I believe if he was discussing with his colleagues, his peers as scholars, he wouldn't answer the question that way. He may actually go to other opinions and say, but this and that. This also brings me to the maslaha argument, because we have established that all the scholars have agreed that nothing in the Quran or Sunnah restricts women from the role of judging. There are other secondary sources of Islamic law that we refer to, when the texts are silent about some things. And we talk about maslaha. And maslaha is about the interests, benefits that are neither explicitly supported nor rejected by any specific legal text of the Quran or Sunnah, but are in line with the objectives of Sharia. Now we talk about justice, which is one of the underlying objectives of Sharia, because any system that is not ruled based on justice cannot succeed. And any law that is not supported by justice is not supported by Islam. Justice is surely one of the objectives of the Sharia. So what we're saying is that in the interest of justice, since there's no categorical prohibition of the role of judging for women, why don't you allow the women to participate, especially when they are qualified, they are capable, and they are willing to contribute? Because a more balanced justice system will make sure that decisions are well balanced, because women are coming in with their own insights, their experiences from where they're coming from, which will in turn ensure balanced decisions. When you look at our Sharia courts that have jurisdiction mainly on family matters, when you look at custody proceedings, I would say that even custody proceedings, women are the experts in that field, because when we're looking at all the things that she needs to consider in determining the welfare of the child. When you look at the issue of welfare or upkeep of the child, she knows better how much she needs, how much a woman will need to bring up a child to take care of his welfare. So I would say women are the experts in that field, and if they're willing and capable of contributing in that area, they should be given a chance. Especially because most of the cases being filed in our Sharia courts or family courts, you see that they are mostly being filed by women. We have more women struggling with child support systems, child support issues. We have more women struggling with single parenthood. So when you bring in women into the justice system, there will be more secure society, because the interests of the women and the children will be better protected, because the women are coming in with their empathy, since they understand better what the women are going through. When you look at the argument that it is said women are emotional, some of the traits of female judges have been identified as emotionality, sensitivity, empathy, and a lower of restricting one to legalistic dogma. These are some of the traits that were identified from female judges. But some people actually said these elements have been identified as elements of a more humane justice worth being applied both by men and women. Nothing says because you are a judge, you should be a person without emotions or rigid or hard. Both women and men have their biases. Variables such as judicial training, court rituals, personal attributes such as age, marital status, gender, social class, political preference, etc., impact the performance of both male and female judges. So at the end of the day, the participation of both is the best system of justice, because both men and women have their biases, depending on what they are both exposed to. Finally, women capable, willing, with the requisite qualifications should be allowed to contribute, especially because we don't have any categorical, explicit, clear, unambiguous prohibition of the said rule, either in Sharia courts or the common law systems in our society, even in Nigeria. I think we should be ready to start that discussion where we would see the first female Qadi or even the Grand Qadi of the Sharia Court of Appeal. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Amina Salihu Ingawa. Jazakillahu khairan. Your contribution is highly appreciated. Like we have said in the morning, the two topics, both of the executive and the judiciary, the women leadership in these sectors or aspects are argued for and against with almost the same authorities. The authorities that we have been listening to since since morning when we sat here listening to the resource persons are the same authorities that are still being referred to, even in the case of judicial officers, women in judicial offices or leadership. Now, this Quran chapter 4, verse 34, vis-a-vis the hadith, the hadith that has been referred to as for that of Abu Bakr, that has been referred to by those that are against the role of women in these sectors or aspects are virtually based on their understanding or interpretation of the provisions. And arguments actually have been conversed using the same authorities for you to actually disengage your reasoning from that perspective by some other scholars. So the essence, like we have said, and just as the last speaker has presented, when you don't know it and you are told that it is prohibited, it is not, women cannot be, and you don't have the knowledge, you go and lie down or sit down with that thinking and assumption. But this is giving us opportunity now, because if you had her as she was presenting, she said the scholar she asked, the reason he was given was that women are sensitive, they are emotional, they are. So these were the reasons. Now, the question is, are these reasons legal enough to justify the position? These are, and many more, is what our gathering is actually out to achieve. And by the grace of God, we are gradually getting there. So I don't want to take much of our time.